Okay. All right, good morning. This is Senate Natural Resources and Energy, and it is Friday, April 4th. And we are going to we're gonna change up the schedule a little bit here. Because we're gonna have Michael O'Grady till 10. So I'd like to pivot to the new draft of S-124 that we have. And just so folks know, we're gonna walk through this new draft. Terry is not gonna be here for the majority of the day. He may be able to zoom in at 11. And so I'd like to hold the vote on it until 11. So that is the plan. And good morning.
Good morning.
Right, it's okay. Just want to catch you up a little bit. I want to just.
Okay.
Which is just talking about the plan because we're pivoting a little bit because we only have Michael Grady until 10.
Okay.
So I want to go through the new draft of 124.
Okay.
And but then Terry's not gonna be able to join us. He may be able to join us at 11. So I'm gonna hold the vote in until 11, but definitely we're definitely voting on it today. So whether he's with us or not. So
Is he okay?
on Zoom, yes, he may be able to join us on Zoom. And so in hopes of that, we'll.
Okay.
He is okay.
He is okay.
He is okay.
Yes, it's too.
Yeah. Okay, and then after that, we'll pivot to 319. So we'll go from there. So welcome.
Morning.
Good morning.
Do we have paper copy?
We do.
Put it on your desk. Okay, is it 1?
2.2.
Yep, 2.2.
Oh.
This is Mike O'Grady with Legislative Council.
Yes.
Gonna review draft 2.2. The April 4th date and then 8/23 and timestamp. Do you just want me to walk through the edits?
Yes.
Okay, the first edit is on page 5. This is in Title 6 and it's related to when a farm needs to get the concentrated animal feeding operation permit. It had previously said on page 5, line 7, an operation determined to be a concentrated feeding animal feeding operation. Operation is not a term that's used in Title 6. And you can see that on page 5, line 4, farm is the term that's used in Title 6. So for consistency, I made the change on line 7. And then I had to change the tense for the requires. The next change on page 6. I split the unsplit infinitive. And
We're all great.
the next change is page 19. And then these are the definitions that were the water quality /CAFO program. And you may remember there were definitions of daily discharge and continuous discharge that were not used in statute anywhere. And you asked that they be removed and the subsequent definitions renumbered. Okay.
Yeah.
And then on page 22. Line 16, and previously said waste or discharge into waters of the United States, and you're not using waters of the United States, you incorporated that into the definition of waters. Page 27 is your next change. On line 2. So the national Clean Water Act permitting system is called the NIFTY system. In Vermont, it's called the VIFTY system. On page 27 in the prior EPA edit, they had used NIFTYs, but with everywhere else you use VIFTYs. So it's just changes that NIFTYs reference to VIFTYs. And then on page 27, line 4, there was there was language missing from the EPA edit. And then Catherine looked up the rule and found that it should say for purposes of this section, where the manure litter or processed wastewater has been applied. So that missing word where was inserted. Your next change is page 28. I mean, these are the substantial changes. This is the stakeholder group on ag water quality. I will admit I struggled a little bit with incorporating your concept of having the agency meet discreetly with individual groups. And so please tell me if I did meet your intent. And I had this edited, but reading over it this morning, there are things that need to be changed. And so with that said, so you have the stakeholder group, important that the agency of natural resources engages in regarding implementation of the CAFO, implementation and transition to a concentrated feeding operation that conforms with Clean Water Act. The process shall include public notice and informational hearings to provide updates on the CAFO program and gather broad public support. The process shall include opportunities for the following stakeholders to provide input, including through discrete meetings between the secretary and specific groups. The ag community, including livestock farmers, farm groups, agricultural consultants, and the environmental community, including watershed groups and water quality experts. And the secretary shall solicit input from stakeholders on the establishment of a CAFO permitting program that should.
Yes, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry for my to interrupt your flow, but so I thank you for attempting to get at this, and I wonder, first of all, I think I know the answer to this, but secretary is just the broad secretary. It could be with her designees, she could designate somebody
Yes.
else in the agency. It doesn't have to be like she's at every single meeting, right?
No.
Okay, and then I guess the question is, do you think we need to be explicit that like some groups are allowed to meet and that there could be discrete meetings? Or do you think it's okay to not be explicit to allow that?
I don't think you. Technically, you don't need to be specific.
Okay,
This is not a public agency engaging in the business of. It's not something subject to the open meeting law.
right,
Unless they're gonna conduct an informational hearing, which you would require them to do. So they can meet discreetly with groups. They do this
all the time,
all the time.
yeah. I mean, the reason that it's sort of laid out, or that is that, and we wanted to be clear that like the farm groups could meet separate, the water groups could meet separate, and then they could all meet together or something like that. And so we're trying to figure out a way to make sure that that's clear that that can happen, but
But that's what they do.
anyway, yeah. So that's why now seeing this in writing, I'm wondering if we need it, because it might raise some red flags having the discrete in there.
I didn't really know how
Yeah.
to deal with that, to basically say the agency is gonna meet with other groups and exclude some groups.
Right.
I mean, they do that anyway. It's like when they have key stakeholders, they talk to key stakeholders.
Yeah.
They meet with those guys on things all the time. They meet with the businesses all the time.
Right.
It's just, you don't need to specifically say that they can do that.
Okay, so I mean, it may be not necessary, I'm just trying to, are you okay with that? Just. Cause having it written out loud, or read out loud, it makes, it's a little.
It's like, why are we saying this?
Exactly,
Yeah.
exactly, right?
Was it,
So,
was it not gonna happen? Yeah, right.
yeah, so I would be fine with just sort of getting rid of that, if you.
And going back to the language.
Going back to the, well, yeah, so just stakeholder engagement process. And just where you list the groups that include, just.
Right, it had previously said, actually, that's the rate.
Is it 1.1?
Um. It previously said the rulemaking process also shall include public notice and informational hearings. And that's, it should say the stakeholder engagement process shall include opportunities. It shall include public notice and informational hearings, provide updates on the CAPO program and gather public input. And then,
You could just,
yeah, I don't have the,
We could just get rid of the phrase including through discrete meetings.
yes,
And that phrase, and then just say the stakeholder engagement process shall include opportunities for the following stakeholders to provide input. Colon, and then you have them all,
yeah,
and then, so it's just getting rid of that phrase.
okay,
Does that work for y'all?
yeah, I mean, I'm looking at the language from yesterday, which I think does the same thing. Then it is in this one, it says, in addition, the stakeholder engagement process shall include specific opportunities for the agricultural community, including livestock farmers, farm groups, and agricultural consultants, the environmental community, including watershed groups and the water quality experts, to share their input on. And then it lists the things. I think it probably works either way. So,
Yeah,
um,
whatever's easier, but since you already put in this language, just getting rid of that phrase, I think covers it.
okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will do that.
Okay.
So in the first subdivision on what the secretary shall solicit input from, it's the establishment of a CAPO permitting program, and it should say administered by the secretary of community resources that ensures compliance with Clean Water Act's requirements. And no farm discharge is in violation of the Clean Water Act's CAPO permit requirements. And then on how to align the CAPO program most effectively with water quality programs administered by agriculture. How to best create regulatory clarity for ag producers for the long term. That's consistent with the Clean Water Act, whether within a two-agency reg system or through a full transfer of regulatory authority, A&R. The resources, technical assistance, and regulatory structure necessary to create a path to compliance for ag producers that maintain CAPOs, and that should not be a semicolon, it should be a full comma, and then APOs and other farms. And then at the bottom of the page 21, and what the report shall address, it shall assess whether the regulatory structure for administering agricultural water quality requirements in the state is sufficient to ensure that water pollution is controlled consistent with the Clean Water Act, or whether sole regulation by A&R over water quality and farm should be implemented.
Sure.
So those are the requested changes. I do not know why the editors didn't pick up some of these things, or maybe they can eat that. But
You had one more on page 31. There's a state program, eyes that glazed over.
big where?
Page 31.
Line 16.
Line 16. Oh, yeah, yeah.
Just AFOs.
Why is that
You want to go version, you want to do version?
or is that a change?
that is a change?
Yeah,
It's just for clarity's sake, it's.
Oh, if you're one for the rest of the changes, is that what?
Yeah.
yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I thought you meant you were done.
Oh, no, oh, no.
Good.
There's a change on page 35. And that's the, I mean, and you just look at the AFOs on page 35. It's changing waters of the US, the waters, and then that's the rest.
All right.
All right.
Okay,
So
thank you.
I can make those edits. I probably won't be able to make them until noon unless you let me go right now.
So if you're able to go right now, then you could have them done by,
Copy 15 minutes.
I think that's worth.
Yes.
Let's do it, and let's take a break in 15 minutes.
Okay.
Okay, amazing, thank you.
Been a long.
Okay, now that we're unmuted. All right, this is some natural resources and energy coming back from a break, and we have a new draft of S-124.
We're not live.
Oh, no, I just unmuted us.
Oh,
Is that okay?
I just went to get copies with Michael already.
You're so good. All right. And just, you know, in the break, I did just triple check that we have dispensation to move S-124. Even though it is not meet crossover, so it's moving on its own.
But it won't, over there, they won't be able to, they'll have to get rules suspension.
They don't actually honor it the way that you do.
Oh,
It's just gonna get sent to the community jurisdictions.
oh, it will? Oh, I thought that,
They don't have a rule like you have a rule.
I didn't know that. I assumed they had the same rule.
I was just having this conversation about how the crossover is an invention of the Senate or a creature of the Senate.
I thought it went the same way.
It's just for people that don't have leverage.
We call it. So, let's go through these changes and,
Okay.
yeah.
So nothing is highlighted, so it's a totally clean copy. The community stakeholder, the group is on page 28. Lines 11 and 12. The language about discrete meetings is struck and it says the stakeholder engagement process shall include opportunities for the following stakeholders to provide input. The ag community, including livestock farmers, farm groups, agricultural consultants, and the environmental community, including watershed groups and water quality experts. Secretary shall solicit input from stakeholders on the word administer was changed to administered on page 28, line 16. And then the next change is on page 29, line 7. There had been a semicolon between capos and capos, and that was changed. Then on page 30, line 3, it had said recommended and now says recommend. And those are the changes. Okay.
Okay. Great, is that what everybody had in mind? Okay. Super, so anticipating that we are going to take a vote on this at 11, if not, well, you know, with or without Senator Williams, hopefully he will be able to join us. But otherwise, are people feeling comfortable with this? Great, okay, super, so thank you. I think we're ready to pivot then. I might need a minute to just get a new bill in front of me. I'd love to pivot to 319. If we could. Yeah. So, and just because, so we'll be voting on version 2.3 of S-124. And I did, just so everybody knows, I was also able to touch base briefly with Senator Ingalls about this draft, so he's at least aware that we're voting and generally speaking, what we did with the bill. So, okay. So we have. I'm bringing a little bit of potential amendment, which I know on the agenda, it had said possible vote today.
I took it off.
Okay, good, because we're not going to be voting 319. Particularly as one possibility is that we end up attaching some salt bill language to 319, so we'll see about that. So we'll have time with this, but I wanted to get this potential amendment out there just so that it is on everybody's radar. So you've got the amendment in front of you. This is just to intro it a little bit.
Sure.
Well, I can tee this up a little bit. This is an amendment that does affect the bill of the Climate Super Fund. Actually, the act number, but it was S-259 last year. And this is, I think of this as just clarifying language. It is moving this phrase, I'm gonna walk through the bill, I suppose, I'm stealing your job.
You want me to?
Sure, I'll just say for now, this is clarifying, I think this is clarifying language. And if you walk through it, then I can, explain a little bit further as to why we're
Sure.
looking at this.
So in the Climate Superfund Act, there was a program set up to secure compensatory payments for persons responsible for greenhouse gas emissions, so that they would provide a payment to the state for the costs that the state has incurred due to their greenhouse gas emissions. In order to calculate that, there had to be a definition of covered greenhouse gas emissions relevant to the period that the recovery, the demand would be sought. And so you see a definition in the proposed amendment of covered greenhouse gas emissions. And it had previously been related to the total quantity of greenhouse gases released in the atmosphere during the covered period. And this was actually a debate back when it was enacted. Should it be for all the greenhouse gas emissions, or only those from the use of fossil fuels that are extracted or refined by an entity during the covered period? And the proposal is to go back to what had been previously proposed when Act 122 S259 was originally debated. And this allows for easier attribution of cost recovery payment to a responsible party. And instead of it being based on every greenhouse gas emission, it's specific to those that are extracted or refined, and that's what a responsible party is. Responsible parties are those who extracted or refined fossil fuels or coal during the covered period, and had regulatory contacts with them. So it's a clarifying amendment. It will allow easier calculation. It will allow use of additional resources by the agency to calculate the covered greenhouse gas emissions.
Yeah. I think that you just said it, it's great. So just moving the one phrase, and then, I just want to point out in the second, strikeout, or change of language, then that the phrase would read, from covered greenhouse gas emissions, which does exactly match the definition above. So, I think if this is relatively straightforward, but we're going to hear more from folks about this change particularly. So just so that this is on everybody's radar at the moment. Okay. Also, so I'm gonna, unless people have thoughts or comments on that, then we'll talk more about it. But the other thing that I wanted to do during this time was to start thinking about H319 as a bill, and start potentially closing out some of the language that's here, seeing how, if there are things that you want to change. So I figured, especially since we have you for another 10 minutes, just walking through the language and seeing if folks have thoughts on stuff as we go. Does this make sense, team? Okay. All right. So, so section 1.
Do you want me to? So
Sure.
you adopted or enacted a battery extended producer responsibility program. And when you enacted that program, you wanted to get a report on how to deal with, or recommendations were, on how to deal with particularly difficult to recycle batteries, like batteries in EVs and batteries basically embedded in equipment, etc. And you required A&R to do that report, but A&R has been working with the product stewardship organization for the battery program. And the battery stewardship organization has agreed to supply this report because it's integral or important to how they run this program in the future. And so they are going to provide the report, but they've asked for an additional year in order to give you that report, and that's what's on page 1 minus 10.
Any questions or concerns about that? Okay, so I'm gonna check it off unless they hear otherwise. Okay, so that,
Page 2, section 2, fuel storage tanks. This is the standard for delivery to Cat 1 underground storage tank, which are basically your gasoline tanks at gasoline stations or gasoline storage depots. And it's moving away from that visible standard to not having a valid permit that may result in the tank releasing. So this is allowing for, doesn't put as much onus on the delivery driver to make a determination if the tank is physically designated. They'll have the ability to do that determination prior to delivery.
Can I ask?
Yes, yes.
So are these are not the oil tanks that people have in their basements?
No, they are not.
This is-
They are specifically exempt residential and farm tanks. And these are the underground storage ones, the ones that are in your basement, although they were technically underground,
Yeah,
they are technically above ground storage tanks.
okay. And how would this relate, for example, to a tank on state property?
It applies to any Cat 1 tank, and so there isn't an exception for state tanks.
Okay. Cause we had an underground fuel tank at the state airport in my district that was leaking for a number of years and they continued to deliver fuel to it.
Well, that shouldn't have been permitted, and once it's determined not to be permitted, it will be on a list and the delivery should not go away.
I mean, it got taken care of, but it took a while.
huh. I think I missed the part about whether it was technically above ground or below ground. Can you just say that? I think I.
Sure.
Wait a minute.
So, when people have heating fuel tanks in their basements or elsewhere in their home.
Yeah.
It's not an underground storage tank, that's an above ground storage tank.
Okay,
And even though it might, if it's in a basement, technically be below the surface. It is still considered an above ground storage tank and it's subject to different standards than standards for Cat 1 underground storage tanks. Cat 1 underground storage tanks are typically pretty big. They should be double wall at this point in time. There are some that are still single wall. But they're supposed to be scheduled for removal. And so that's, I mean, I saw a tractor trailer load of heating fuel tanks going down the highway the other day. And there were maybe 100 on the truck. You only put about 2 max underground storage tanks on the trailer.
those are so big.
Now, back in the day, people like my grandfather buried his heating fuel tank on his own because he wanted to. But then it created a huge issue when we tried to sell his house. So there's stuff like that.
Thanks, Grandpa.
Wait, thank you, that is all, so it couldn't be around. Then that one would have been underground.
That would have been underground. It would have been a major underground.
Fair enough. Okay, any questions or concerns about this section? Okay, all right, great, checking it off. Section 3,
Section 3, these changes are significant changes. It's about the household hazardous waste EPR program that you enacted last biennium. It was it's a first in the nation program. And there is some basically, I don't want to call it growing pains, it's like some time, additional time needed to figure out how to run the program. And the major change that they're looking for is to give them 3 years to implement a scaled down collection plan so that they can learn what they don't know, figure out where they're going to do collection points, determine how they're going to do assessment to their members. And then after 3 years, they go to the full-fledged typical collection plan, which has convenient collection, payment of collection facilities, education, disposition requirements, etc. But before you even get to that, you probably heard something about architectural paint and where paint should be covered. I saw the solid waste management districts were in, I think, yesterday. I think that was probably the primary thing that they were looking to address. I don't know what they have requested, because the bill was introduced, had paint in it, it had the changes to the paint care program. That was totally removed by the House. I still think the solid waste districts have concerns, but I don't know what they are.
So my understanding is that it is very possible that we may see an amendment that is some consensus language around paint. We'll see if that happens in time, and if we don't have time for a lot of controversy, so we'll see what the the sentiment is behind all of that, and if it is seeming like it is not particularly controversial, then we'll see if it's something we can add in if we still have time, but for now, paint is not otherwise specifically addressed, is my understanding.
Okay.
But I am just looking at section 3, I'm actually having a hard time.
There is no change in section.
There's no
3.
section 3.
There's no change in section 3.
It's just context.
The House wanted it there so that they could refer to it on the floor if the whole issue of paint came up.
Oh, I see.
And I wouldn't do that, but
Okay.
it was requested by the entire committee, and I'm like, okay.
Okay, that's good to know. Unless there's objections, I mean, one possibility is, well, let's leave it as a placeholder for now, and we'll see if we have any further language on paint. Okay.
Section 4 is that the registration requirements for the manufacturers of the covered household hazardous products and registration requirements for the stewardship organization. You'll see some date changes in this language. Page 5, line 19, beginning July 1, 2026, and annually thereafter, they renew their registration. The stewardship organization renews their registration. A lot of the language that's struck on page 5, lines 3 through 10, is just included on page 6. The list of the manufacturers participating in the organization, list of breakdowns. This is what covers products and manufacturer, contact information for compliance, description of how the organization meets requirements to allow others to come in. That's what 7184 is. And then the name and address of the contact person to allow other people to join the organization. And then Article 4, November 1, 2025, a manufacturer of covered household hazardous products needs to register with the stewardship organization. In section 5, page 6 going on page 7, you'll see how there's that initial plan on page 7. Line 8 and 9, and you'll see all this language struck about the collection plan, because that's the full collection plan. But that just comes into play after the 3-year period. And that is on page 12, line 10, the subsequent plan after the expiration of the initial plan, which has a 3-year term. The collection plan shall include all the things that were just struck, all the things that you added to the program as part of the plan. That's why, I mean, they're still going to be part of the plan. It's just that they won't go into place until probably 2029. And I say probably because the program doesn't start until 6 months after A&R approves a collection plan. And so you don't know the exact dates when the program will start. And so you get list of participants, you have 3 statewide collection. You have payment on page 13.
So before we go too much further, because there's a lot here, I just want to check with committee. Yes,
Is this one of the many things that they said that they can't do because of staffing, or was it because they hadn't been able to figure out the details of the program? I can't remember.
yeah, so my recollection, so the first part, so just back in section 4, so we need this prohibition on sale unless they participate, so that's, I think, pretty straightforward. And then we had there was an initial plan, they wanted to sort of have the initial plan be
Right.
separate from the ongoing plan.
Right,
So that is, I don't think that was like a staffing
okay,
issue, it was sort of like, let us have some growing things.
Yeah,
Is that-
this is a program, it's first in nations. The scope of products will be very large. The way you manage the different types of products will be different
Mhm.
depending on the nature, risk. And how you do the collection for these types of products is different from the relatively harmless types of waste. So they have to figure out ways to do this, and then they have to figure out how to assess the cost to all its members. Are they gonna do that by category of covered household houses? Because the cost to deal with some might be more expensive than the cost to deal with
Right.
others.
right,
And you can make these people subsidize the cost for these people. So there's all types of
Okay.
issues.
because there's a sort of theme in a lot of the bills that we're doing of pushing dates out, and some of them are for these technical
But
reasons.
later on in the
and some of them
bill,
are-
you will see that it's partly the wetland stands, flood hazard area, the recorder. They did request more people than they received,
Yeah,
and especially in the dams department with all the demand on dams.
yeah,
They don't have enough people, and it's hard to hire dam engineers at the state level because the private industry right now is paying engineers much more than the
Right.
state could pay. And so the people that do it, like, they love dams, that's why they're doing
I know you gotta
it.
go,
Right.
but I have, before you go, I do have one question. About a language piece, which is on page 15. Did we answer your question though, Senator Harding?
yeah, more or less.
Yeah, I mean, this section is not pushing it out, it's more like breaking up the rollout.
Yeah, I mean, I think we should just, in our committee discussion about the
Yeah.
budget, I'd like to talk about this.
Yeah.
Because we can ask for new positions for something else, and then, but there are some things that that aren't getting done because they don't have enough staff, and like, should we be thinking about that more?
Yeah, I think that's.
What do we wanna prioritize about, and where do we put people to do
Yeah.
that?
I think that's absolutely. So, page 15, line 9. I circled this when we went through this the first time, method of disposition. That does not, I wondered if it was supposed to be method of disposal, but it is disposition.
It's how, because it may not be disposed of, it might be recycled. Some of this stuff is technically, you can't recycle it if you manage it appropriately. And some of it can be reused for different things. And so it's not just disposal, it's how it's gonna be managed. You could say method of management instead of disposition.
Okay, just to flag that, I feel like method of management would just be more clear because disposition needs to, in my mind, it means other things. So
Sure.
just to flag that. Okay, thank you for saying a couple extra minutes, really appreciate it. So I don't necessarily feel like we are ready to check off section 4 yet, but we'll note that is where we left off in walking through things. Which started on page 3, okay. It's a long section, it is a long section. Okay, so, still on the topic of, 319, we have, Mr. Walsh. Hello, welcome.
Yeah.
Hello. Morning.
For the record, Ben Edley Walsh from the Vermont Public Interest Research Group. I wanted to just confirm what the chair would like me to speak to this morning. I'm happy to briefly reiterate and expand on what you heard from Mr. Iapino the other day. I wanted to ask whether I should be speaking to the men that was supposed to be outside this morning.
That would be great if you have thoughts on.
Absolutely. So let me just start at a high level on the climate superfund aspects of 319, both what's already in there and what you've been asked about. Just to state plainly and briefly, DFIR is fully comfortable with moving the resilience adaptation strategy outside of rulemaking. As I told House Environment when they took that up, that was never. I do not recall anyone ever really asking for that to happen last year. It just was sort of a how the bill was drafted and evolved in judiciary. There was a different similar idea that was in the bill as introduced. That happened to coincide with the resilience implementation strategy being announced by the administration and the treasurer, and essentially one was swapped with the other, and it had been rulemaking in the original bill and wound up continuing to be rulemaking when the resilience implementation strategy was sort of dumped in for what happened in the bill. And so as Mr. Said the other day, giving them a little more flexibility than rulemaking, rulemaking is a more formal process makes sense for this thing. In terms of the other requests you heard from the treasurer and ANR on Wednesday, we absolutely understand the rationale for moving the deadline back by 12 months. This is a big, important new thing that needs to be done thoughtfully and well, and understand that trying to get it done by next January might not be feasible and certainly could result in it being a little more rushed than it needed to be. So that all seems entirely reasonable to us. And then to the money, I just wanted to very briefly touch on that, and then I'll just speak to the amendment on your website. I won't remake the case that you heard very thoroughly from Anthony the other day, but I will say that it seems like every few days there's more news that comes out that, at least for us, really underscores the need for this kind of program. Literally just this morning, GRIS, website that covers climate and related environmental news, broke story, the headline being FEMA moves to end one of its biggest disaster adaptation programs. They received an internal memo at FEMA that they intend to eliminate the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities program. I only saw this about an hour ago, but in just looking at looking at the state's website briefly before committee, it looks like that brings in maybe something like $4 million a year, in addition to potential receipt of competitive grants for building or resilient communities. I mean, it's fairly self-explanatory program. Now, I understand there's sort of two potential reactions to that, all these cuts that we're seeing. And I should note that I haven't seen any news locally on this, but that Christine Nome has stated that she intends to eliminate FEMA. And the Attorney General here in Vermont is part of a lawsuit around the Trump administration already withholding FEMA funds from the state of Vermont, potentially in violation of a court order to stop doing that. So, this to us says we've got to find more funds than we have available to us here in Vermont. We understand, obviously, there's a lawsuit about this law right now. But as the pro tem said in judiciary last year when it was voted on, there is no way to get a dime from any of these companies that have emitted so much, caused the emission of so much carbon pollution and really are the root of the climate crisis. Absent a program like this is the only way to do it. And so our reaction to news like this is we need to really make sure that we have the best possible shot of this being implemented and actually bringing in funds and doing that rigorously and on the quickest feasible, reasonable timeline. Seems to us absolutely essential with all of the uncertainty around what, if any, help Vermont will receive when we inevitably get hit by the next unrelated impacts, storms on down the line. Unless there's any questions on that, I'll continue to the amendment.
Could you?
I don't know. Go ahead with the amendment, formulate.
Sure. Happy to answer questions later as well. So in reading through this, the way I would describe my understanding of this amendment is in the statute as it passed last year, covered emissions are sort of described two different ways. There's one way in the definition, then later in the bill, when it's talking about apportionment amongst the responsible parties, it describes it in a slightly different way. And I think one of those two ways works very well with the data and data sets available to the implementing agency, in this case, Agency of Natural Resources, and the other way would be much more difficult to implement in real terms. And what I mean by that is one of the, and I'll speak to the specific language in just a moment, one of the ways it could be constructed, one of the ways it's described in the bill from last year is the covered emissions are based on the time of combustion of the relevant fossil fuels. The other way is the covered emissions are based on the time of extraction or refining of the relevant fossil fuel. And the data around extraction and to a lesser degree refining is, I wouldn't say readily available, but with enormous effort, which has been put into the carbon makers database, real available, and as you heard from the Agency of Natural Resources the other day, makes this a very doable task. Because there is data out there on exactly when fossil fuels come out of the ground, when they're extracted, and when they're refined. That is not nearly as true to the other way that you could do it. If you're basing it on time of combustion, there's not, to the best of my knowledge, any data set available about when precisely each barrel of oil, to use an example, is combusted. To give a couple of quick examples, if a company were to extract a barrel of oil towards the end of last year, refine it, get it into the marketplace late last year, we don't actually know whether that went into a gas tank and was combusted on December 31st or January 1st. And if the law is based on the time of combustion, you actually have to have that knowledge. Conversely, at the beginning of the period, you could have a barrel of oil put into the Strategic Petroleum Reserve in the early 90s. And we won't necessarily know, or the data isn't necessarily available to understand whether that came out prior to or after January 1st of 1995.
It could be in Michael's grandfather's very tank and just sitting somebody's lawn.
Did you hear that?
I did not, I'm not gonna.
You should try to watch it, it's pretty funny.
So, to get back to the language. Essentially, I think, not at all, I wish I had heard that, that's like that. Essentially, I think what this does is it clarifies that every instance, in the statute that talks about covered greenhouse gas, that really is based on the time of extraction and refining, and so you're really limiting it to extraction and refining that's happening between January 1st, 1995 and December 31st, 2024. And that is data that, as ANR has testified in this committee to, is out there, the data set is available. Obviously, the 2024 data is still being compiled, but they will be able to do this work based on that data set with this amendment. Without this amendment, I think it makes it at least more ambiguous as to what data set they would have to use.
Okay, I do have a question, so, we heard the testimony the other day asking for us to fund the positions and the consulting fees, whatever contract fees, to do this work, both at the Treasurer's Department office and the Agency of Natural Resources. And, it's no secret that there's a ton of things being cut at the federal level and lots of holes that we're gonna be asked and already are being asked to fill. And also, to the point I was making earlier, 319 is a bill that's, a lot of it's just pushing out dates on a lot of things, including like dam work and flood recovery stuff, which, so there's this cart horse thing happening. And so as we start thinking about how do we prioritize the limited funds that we have now, especially now that all the ARPA funds are gone, we were able to kind of do both when we had all that money, but do the, analysis and research and prevention work, and also the sort of mitigation and whatever recovery work. And now we don't have money to do it all. So I'm trying to figure out like what is a responsible kind of way to think about prioritizing the work in this area. And knowing that we just can't do it all. So what do you think? I mean, and don't tell me just do everything, because that's not gonna be possible. So how would you sort of frame that thinking?
I appreciate you asking that question. I sort of started that thought and didn't quite tie a bone out when I was speaking earlier. So I appreciate the opportunity. I will say, obviously, that is the ideal, that is the optimal path.
I'd love to
We live in a suboptimal world, especially right now. We're extremely aware of that. And let me just say,
Such an understatement, sorry, anyway, yeah.
it goes to I will say, and then I'll get the direct response to your question. We are already in the climate community writ large, self-censoring in a pretty dramatic way in terms of the asks that we're making. Right, like the EV incentive program, to put one example out there, ran dry, all of the EV incentive programs are targeted low and moderate income providers, and all of them ran dry last October. And so if we were being, really asking for everything that we felt was necessary from a climate standpoint, I will actually dial way back from that. Just funding the programs that the legislature has already created. We should be asking for 12 million for the EV incentive, 3 million for mileage card, several million for the Replace Your Ride program, several additional million to prevent transit cuts from happening. And we may highlight those needs to appropriations, in a week or two and in a letter to them. But we have really zeroed in on this specific funding because of how much potential it has to unlock other funding down the road. And so to get to the specific answer to your question, I think there's two reasonable reactions to all the cuts we're seeing. And just all limited to, the resilience and adaptation space, and disaster response at the federal level. One is there's a big gap that is being created and we need to do anything we can to fill the gap right now. The other is obviously anything we can do in gap plugging right now is very important, but we simply can't plug that gap with Vermont taxpayer funds. And so we need to do everything we can to actually see what I think a reasonable guesstimate would be, is at least going to be hundreds of millions, potentially could be billions of dollars from the companies that are responsible for the climate crisis. Again, we don't know if that money will come, but if we have a 10, 20, 50% chance, some reasonable chance of that coming in the latter half of this decade, that is worth the investment that is being requested right now. Because the alternative is we do a little bit of gap plugging now and then simply are completely and utterly unable to do it down the road, because not only will the gap be getting bigger, the climate crisis is only going to get worse. So every additional year we wait to do this work and potentially receive those funds is an additional year worse that the climate crisis will be in, an additional year of resilience and adaptation investments that will go unmade. A bridge that's not a little bit more resilient in 2030 is going to get washed out in 2031. So time really is of the essence. And then let me just speak directly to the amounts requested and the different requests. We have stated on the record here and other places that the full 1.5 million is important. We are very supportive of A&R being fully resourced to do this work. But sequentially, their work comes later. They are certainly doing some work now, but the real meat of their work in terms of actually apportioning the costs can happen after this fiscal year, whereas the treasurer's work, if it doesn't happen right now, the whole endeavor grinds to a halt. And so we're really focused on the treasurer's ask. And I will say, and I don't have any direct knowledge of exactly, what would be able to be done with what amount of money, but were they to not receive the full 700,000 for consultants that they requested, I think it is entirely reasonable to suggest that they can still do a substantial amount of work. I don't know, I don't have a specific lower number, but I am quite sure that they could get consultants hired and begin to do substantial work on this, even if you were not able to give them their full request this year. As much as it seems that, I think that's it.
Thanks, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Yes, go ahead.
Just to remember that they did make the case that they need the full 700 on the theory that it's going to be hard to hire consultants if you have the money that actually takes to complete the project. So saying that we'll get the money for the next year, the next fiscal year is an issue. As you're trying to hire consultants, so I just wanted to put that on the table, but I should remember that sort of partial response. I think if they're here, they might respond that way to what you just said. I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just saying we should keep that all in mind as we pick this through.
Can I respond to that briefly? One, obviously, I am not and cannot speak for the attorney's office, so you should ground truth what I just told you with them. The other thing I would say though is, I think that reviewing the RFIs, having spent time with both the statute and the science that would be used for this, I think the reality is it's not like one big mega analysis that you need to fund with one big check. It's probably multiple analyses. For instance, the analysis of river valley flooding would probably not be, it may not be the same contract, but certainly would be severable from the analysis of abatement costs for adaptation and resilience investments. And so they could do some but not all of the work if they get some but not all of the money. That would be my best guess based on my understanding of the science.
But I want to get where you're going, just want to make sure.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Thank you.
Maybe worth following up some more questions about that. So thank you so much. Okay, so since we do not have any further witnesses, and we anticipate not having Senator Williams until 11. So we'd love to take a break until then, and then we'll move directly to a vote on S-124. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Well, actually, a question for you. Do you happen to know if we are joined by Senator Williams?
He's not, he has not asked to join.
Oh, bummer. Okay. Well, it is after 11, so we are going to move on to the vote. I want to make sure that I have the right folder here.
Okay, I have a feed here for Senate Bill 124.
Okay, and I think we need a motion to first amend the bill to draft 2.3.
I would move, that we amend S-124 as amended in draft 2.3 dated today at 9:26 AM.
Favorable with amendment.
Yeah,
Okay,
sure.
Oh,
And we can do it
then
in
we
one
do it
vote,
in
right?
one.
we're just voting on the amendment.
So how do you wanna do it? Cause I think we can do it all as one vote,
Let's
as amended.
let's do it all as one vote for version 2.3. Yeah,
2.3 as amended. So,
S-124 as amended in version 2.3,
okay,
I think is the motion,
Okay.
yeah.
great. Let me know when you're ready.
okay,
Call the roll.
Senator Beck, yes, Senator Baumgart,
Yes.
Senator Hardy,
Yes.
Senator Williams. Senator Watson.
Yes.
401.
Okay. Oh, and I didn't check in, if you would like to, you certainly may. But I will do it if you don't want to.
I would be happy to.
Okay, amazing.
Do you know, is there an ag report or not? Because it started from them, but it didn't come to us with their report and tax, I don't know.
Let's find out about that.
Senator Hardy's been report.
Mhm.
Okay.
That's a good question, and I also am not sure if this is going to approach her to finance.
Oh, it's,
So.
it doesn't have any appropriations in it, would it maybe go to finance because, well, it doesn't have.
I think there in actually in section, was it 4? There's a thing about the,
There is a thing, there are fees sort of mentioned, but they aren't set. Oh, it does say that they only have to do one fee, not both fees, so
Right.
yeah, it probably will
go to finance.
Good.
So Scott and I get to
Yeah, see it again.
do it again.
But there's no appropriation.
No.
Well, so the
They're in the budget.
they're in the budget, they're separate.
Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay. I think that is it. Okay, I think we're done and we're on the floor at 11:30. So with that, we will adjourn.